will be joining us asynchronously. Hello, Brett. Thank you for joining us. Good afternoon, everyone. It's awesome to have you join us today. Happy New Year. I'm sure it's the first time, it's our first edition of the year. So we're super excited to have you, grateful and thankful for um, joining us and, of course, connecting and learning and sharing from all of your amazing experiences across the past years. This year promises to be amazing as usual. We have an amazing lineup of speakers, interesting topics, but also insightful conversation that we plan to get to and unpack this year. One of them is what we will consider today, foundational numeracy. It's such an important thing and one that you hear very frequently in the current year. And we have an amazing PhET fellow who, of course, who is doing some work in and around foundational numeracy, in particular, how learners in rural Kenya, how she's able to support foundational numeracy for learners in rural Kenya. So I'm not going to get to that in a bit. I won't speak up for, I won't go ahead and share what she has to say before that, but it's just exciting to have you. Thank you for joining. Before we get started, as always, I can see Gada and Lucian and Beth already writing. Please feel free to write where you're connecting from, your name, and perhaps the subject that you teach. So just anything for us to know you. And we will be right on our way. As always, this is the Africa Share and Discuss webinar series brought to you by the PhET Interactive Simulation Project at the University of Colorado in Boulder, United States. And this webinar is brought to you in partnership with the MasterCard Foundation. Through the webinar, we intend to bridge the gap or shift practices, like we always say, basically transfer practice or research into practice by bringing seasoned researchers who are carrying out amazing work and validating, of course, tools such as PhET, but also methods that are proven effective on the continent. And then, of course, communicating all of that to teachers and educators on the continent to improve their practice and ensure everyone is teaching and learning of maths and science on the continent is effective. And this webinar holds once a month, every third Wednesdays of the month. And on the screen, you'll find the breakdown based on the country or the time zone that you are located. So it's at 4 p.m. GMT every third Wednesday of the month. Is where we meet and then, of course, discuss, bring you sitting speakers and conversation. And as always, you can catch up with past recording. This recording, once it's over, you can go ahead and share with friends and colleagues who might not be able to join us live, but would benefit from the conversation. But also past recording are also made available, and you can also always catch up and relive those conversations. So I invite you to visit YouTube and search for PhET Interactive Scenes and or just share and discuss, Africa Share and Discuss, and you'd find our playlist of past editions. Some housekeeping rules before we get on our way. While the session is on, while the speaker is presenting, we will not be taking questions. We've saved an ample amount of time at the end, once that presentation is over, for us to, of course, allow you share via the mic or just write in the chat or use the question and answer feature here in Zoom to communicate your questions, and we'll get them across to the speaker. So please feel free to just take note of your questions while our speaker is sharing, and then we'll come back to the questions in the chat. For those joining us on Facebook, please feel free to write in the chat, and my colleagues will definitely be listening out for your questions. And one last and important thing, these conversations, it's an hour, but they come pretty fast, and you figure that we really cannot exhaust the conversation in just an hour. So we invite you to join the community on Facebook, where you can connect with the speaker, as well as, of course, current speaker and past speakers, but as well as the larger community of PhET users on the continent. You can ask questions or get support, or even find other users in your country to get started on your journey with integrating PhET simulations in your classroom. Without further ado, I know we're excited to start the year, but also start with an exciting conversation. I would like to introduce our speaker for today, and she's none other than Mercy Homer. Mercy is the Educational Programs Coordinator at EduTimes. I would allow her to say a little more about EduTimes in her presentation, but most importantly, she's also a PhET Fellow who, with a depth of understanding around, of course, the effective use of PhET, but also the recommended strategies to get the best value out of PhET simulations. I'll hand the mic over to Mercy now as she talks us through foundational learning using PhET sims to boost numeracy in rural schools, technically making math learning more fun, practical, and personalized, and from my experience in rural Kenya. Good afternoon, Mercy, and thank you for joining us today.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Sala, for PhET Global Team for offering me this opportunity. I'm just going right ahead to share my screen. Hi, everyone. My name is Mercy Ouma. I'm very excited to be here today. And over the past 1 year, we have been working with educators and learners to support effective use of technology in teaching and learning. We have implemented numeracy programs in rural schools, one of which is the PhET simulation to enhance numeracy skills among learners. In this presentation, I'm going to show you how PhET simulations are not just tools, but catalysts in playful learning, particularly in the context of foundational numeracy in our rural schools. For our key takeaways today, we are going to look at objectives that PhET simulations strive to achieve in enhancing foundational numeracy skills. We are also going to look at the information about schools involved, um, especially the rural school setting. We are going to explore the resources and methods employed in teaching process, focusing on numeracy enhancement. We're going to look at identification and discussion of challenges associated with conventional teaching methods in the context of foundational learning. We are going to look at, we are going to have an overview of the introduction and integration of PhET simulations to teachers and learners in the classroom. We are going to look at the observations and feedback from both the school, from both the teachers and students on the impact of PhET simulations in learning. We are going to look at an examination of an assessment conducted and overall impact of PhET simulations on numeracy skills. We are also going to reflect on the challenges faced during implementation of PhET simulation in rural classrooms. Then finally, we are going to look at a summary of the key findings, conclusions drawn, and suggestions for future use in similar contexts. So looking at the objectives that PhET simulations aim to address in this case, it was to adapt teaching methods to individual needs, that is, students' way of learning, letting everyone move on their own pace, to solve the problem of lack of physical resources for learning math, to, to provide a tailored instruction where maths is turned into an engaging, colorful game where children are able to move around and play with shapes and numbers, to enhance learners' experience and get them understand and engage with the material that they're learning. Yes, so looking at these objectives, um, there's this PhET simulation here. So this first simulation, I'm just going to select just randomly one of these levels and try to show you how these first simulations are able to make learning, to enhance learning. So in this particular simulation, so I'm supposed to like build a fraction from this shape and match it to the fractions here. So as a
I'm
student,
I'm sorry to cut in. I understand you might be trying to show us your scene. We don't see that yet, but we still see your slide. So why
oh,
not
oh,
just click on share screen again, and then you can choose the scene. We only see we still see your slide, but we don't see the scene.
okay. Okay, let me continue, then I'll get back to this.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay. So
Okay.
looking down at this diagram here, it contains simulations which are addressing some of the objectives that PhET simulations can achieve. So these are just fraction simulations, different sections of the screens, which I was trying to demonstrate, but I'm sorry that it couldn't show on this other side, and I promise to show it later. So looking at the context, from the context we were working with 3 rural primary schools in Kitale, Western Kenya, where we have underdeveloped infrastructure. The infrastructure there is limited internet connectivity, inadequate access to electricity, and old classrooms. As you can see here, we are projecting a simulation, but we have to use a white paper so that the simulation can show very well. And and also the walls, you can see the walls, how they are. So that is the kind of infrastructure that are there in these schools. The learners that we were dealing with were between grades 3 to 6, and they are of ages 9 to 12. And each class, they are overcrowded, 40 to 60 learners. And sometimes you could find that this crowding comes about by assembling these learners together so that they can learn something in a room, in a single room. So this number may double, like 60 can go up to 100 plus, simply because the classroom that has electricity maybe is one, and that is the only classroom they are able to use, considering the kind of infrastructure that is in the school. Then learners are more conversant with their home language. Their local language is Swahili. They communicate mostly in Swahili, and teachers try to explain concepts in Swahili language. So that is what they are conversant with. These learners are not able to receive adequate school help from their caregivers or parents because they have limited education. They either didn't go to school or have very little education, and therefore they're not able to relate school work and help children to do their homework. Luckily, there is an availability of technology materials. For example, the government of Kenya provided tablets are present in the schools. So looking at the teaching resources and methods used prior to PhET simulations, we have the basic teaching aids, which are the chalks, wall charts, or wall paintings. As you can see in the picture here, there is a painting of fractions, okay? And then printed material, which are textbooks. The teaching methods is a lot of repetition and memorization. So you find that sometimes they even have to sing along about a particular concept for them to understand, or they have to memorize, okay,
I
something.
miss I miss you. So sorry, I'm crashing in again. I'm not your view is kind of shrunk as well. We can't see it full screen. So can you click on the bottom right button? The bottom right, yes. That two arrows facing diagonal arrows. Yes, if
Okay.
you click on that, perfect. That's better now. So we can see your
It's
pictures.
okay now.
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. So let's continue. I was talking about having a lot of repetition and memorization. For example, you find that learners are subjected to singing songs so that they can capture a particular concept, or they repeat something in class, like they repeat after the teacher so that they can grasp a particular line of a concept. Um, then another one is that the teachers follow prescribed teaching steps. And these steps are present in the teacher guides, where the teachers are following those steps keenly to deliver their lessons. Uh, there are lessons where group activities are given. For example, you find that in a school, you have so many students and teachers are few compared to the number of students. Teacher-student ratio. So teacher-student ratio is a bit high, and therefore some teachers may not have time to cater for all students. So students are left to do some group activities to work on class assignments. So challenges with these teaching methods above, we find that there's minimal classroom interaction because it is chalk and talk, and less student collaborative explorations. They are not able to be, they don't have these sufficient resources or materials to allow them to collaborate with one another and learn from one another. And therefore, less student conceptual understanding. So understanding of concepts is also a challenge because they're not exposed to more teaching methods like their urban counterparts. Moving on to the implementation of the PhET simulations. So we started our implementation of PhET simulations with teacher professional development. So 46 teachers were drawn from the three schools, and these teachers were subjected with familiarizations of technology with education using PhET simulations. So initially, these teachers are the only technology that they were conversant with was using their mobile phones because they use their mobile phones frequently. And when it comes to learning, they didn't have technology that they were using. But some of them pointed out that they were streaming YouTube videos to learners. So in this particular professional development, these teachers were familiarized with PhET simulations. So how did they access these simulations? They used the tablets that were present in the school, which were working by then. They used laptops and their own mobile phones. And so these simulations were made available to them via an offline Moodle application because we were also looking at solving the problem of unstable internet connectivity or lack of it. So we used an offline Moodle application. So in this picture here, you see that these are teachers, and the workshop involved a lot of hands-on experience. There were demonstrations, and as you can see here, the teacher is trying to demonstrate a particular simulation. So there were demonstrations on maths and science simulations, and you find that they were also dealing with how to they were also looking at pedagogical strategies on using PhET simulations, especially on guiding students' exploration, facilitating discussions, lesson planning, and promoting inquiry-based learning. In terms of curriculum alignment, teachers were shown how to align the education content in PhET simulations with curriculum objectives and standards, ensuring that ensuring that the PhET simulations have seamless integration within instructional plans. So as you can see here, this is the lesson plan that was used. They were looking at the objectives within this simulation, and in fact, they even tried to generate an objective that from the PhET simulations that would suit the context that they were in, the rural context. And therefore, they noticed that there were challenges that they would face if they were using the ordinary teaching methods that I just described above. And so those challenges were, one of it is that learners would struggle with visualizing operations as the concept is abstract. They were also having the inability to provide enough concrete examples to demonstrate the fractions concepts. Then also different learning paces by students as others need additional practice. Then under-resourced classrooms, which lack physical resources to support hands-on fraction activities. Then there's also that limited time, that is 40 minutes in a lesson may not allow you to look into how students are exploring are exploring fractions, which is hands-on. And also it may not also allow you to really get an in-depth understanding of how your students are grasping. Yes, so after noticing those challenges that they would have, then they realized that PhET was having that potential to assist in math teaching, and that would solve these challenges. So after having the workshop and teacher training using PhET simulations, we went ahead to have the PhET simulation implementation in the classroom. So 20 tablets were at use at a given time. And you find that learners in a classroom are many, okay, between 45 to 60, and you have 20 tablets. So that meant that groups of 4 to 6 students would own one tablet and use a single tablet. Then these simulations were made accessible via an offline model app. So therefore, they would access these simulations very well. And they played with these simulations covering topics in math, such which provided them with hands-on experience, and they really loved it. And so the topics they covered was number line, fractions, and areas. And they did this in turns. So for the classroom experience, we noted several observations and we collected the feedback. So looking at this first quote here, where these learners say that they have reached a level in the game where they did not expect. To me, I related that with an increased learner engagement because they kept on learning and then they kept on engaging with the content until they found themselves that they cannot like move ahead. So they really, really, really engage with that content very much. Then there is this other quote here by a particular learner that we have learned math with less calculations and paperwork. So you can imagine this learner uh, uh, enjoying doing math with less calculations, less paperwork, and associate with that with a positive attitude towards math. Then there's this teacher who pointed out of a student who does not actively participate in class, but was able to go to the front of the class and demonstrate um, some concepts in maths to other students. So to me, that one is an increased, it enhanced learner communication. So therefore, these particular observations here was attributed to PhET simulations used in math lessons. So when we look at the assessment, how was I able to assess the impact of PhET simulations on their learning outcomes? So first of all, I used checkpoints, and I did this by walking around the classroom and asking questions. What is happening if you do this? What is happening if you do that? Try this. And what have you seen? Such kind of questions really help me to see whether they are getting it or not getting it. Then I also checked in individually with students or small groups by having conversations with the students, and that what I focused on is what are they doing in the simulation, and not necessarily what answer they are getting. So I was trying to get the learning process and not the learning outcome. Then I was also checking for points of confusion. Like if there's a point of confusion for the whole class, then you call the whole class to a standstill and you correct that confusion that they will be having. For example, uh, for the fractions, we have the shaded parts and the unshaded parts. So some of them will give the fraction of the unshaded part and not the shaded part. And some will give a fraction of the unshaded part and not the shaded part. So that is the kind of the point of confusion that helped with checking in individually with students and also the small groups. I would also allow them to check in with me, like I would pose a question so that they can try, or just ask them to go to the lab section and try up and come up with a particular operation, and ask them to call me if they're done. So if they do that, um, I would like that is to ensure that they are on the right track. Then towards the end of the lesson, I would do a whole class check-in whereby I bring the whole class together and project the simulation on the board, and I call a particular student to perform a certain operation and ask the class if that is correct or not, and even allow them to discuss along the way. So that is a way of also checking if they're understanding the whole concept or not. So those are some of the ways that I use to assess the students' way of learning using the simulations. So during this implementation of PhET simulations on numeracy, uh, we encountered some challenges. So the challenges that we encountered, one of them is technical issues, technology glitches. So you find that the government provided tablets. Some of them have this problem that we didn't really understand. You find that along the way, a particular simulation either stops playing or it hangs, and therefore it makes us to um, uh, give a particular, or makes us to transfer those children to join other groups. So it makes us have congested groups because now the tablets that other groups were using are not working. So there was that aspect of congestion. Then there is this resistance to change by teachers. In as much as we did this professional development on use of PhET simulations to boost numeracy, there was still that bit of resistance from teachers because they were uncomfortable using electronic devices in teaching and learning due to limited technological knowledge. We may not say that they had this full comfort in using technology. They have very limited comfort, and therefore it made them resist to change. Then contextual limitations. We had teachers reporting that they were having difficulties to choose the appropriate fit simulations for a certain topic, for a certain grade level. So we had to have more support to support them fully, to really integrate, to really contextualize and, pick what they're able to give to students and leave what they're not able to give to their students. Also, on that, we had teachers who had problems sharing the simulation with students. And we also had a problem understanding how to use PhET simulation in the classrooms. We also had problems in making, they also had problems in making simulations accessible to maybe the tablets. And then finding teacher resources from the PhET website was also a problem to them, and downloading the simulations. So those are the contextual limitations the teachers had. Talking about the huge class sizes or overcrowded classrooms, you find that it was not really easy to gauge learners' understanding, because when a group of learners have a tablet, and this group of learners are so many, then you're not able to tell if each one of them is really understanding the concept. But we tried very much to ensure that a great number understand the concept, and those who are not understanding are helped by their peers. Then commuting with the digital devices from office to school was also a big problem. Because of the technical glitches that we encountered with the government provided tablets in schools, then we had to carry our own from the office to school, which was not something very easy to do. Then the time constraints. Time was very limited, considering the lesson times that children are normally given for the lesson. 40 minutes is very little time for learners to really explore concepts. And so what we did here is that we requested, or teachers organized, to have double lessons. So that is 40 times 2. That is 80 minutes lesson, so that the student can have that enough time, and even the teachers have enough time to take the children through a guided learning. But it was not easy for other teachers to allow their time to be used for that activity. So from that experience, the conclusion and the suggestion that I gathered from this experience is that improving initial teacher training should be done. Okay, so teacher training should not be done just once, but continuous training, because also as they interact with the simulations, they also encounter other things that were not addressed in the initial training. So therefore, repeated trainings will really help so much, so that the teachers are able to get comfortable to use the simulations, because now they'll be able to know how to use them very well. Peer support among the teachers is also useful, because teachers are also like students. It's just that they are bigger students and who understand concepts differently. And therefore, having that support with one another helps really a lot, because you are able to even collaborate on how to do this collectively in your classes if you're sharing the lessons, that is. Then self-learning technologies are for learners who have this problem of school dropouts. So in the context of in the rural context, we have huge number of students dropping out because of hardships. So if we have technologies in PhET simulations that can also help these students to learn on their own, will be something very helpful to them. Already we have the virtual training for teachers. What if we have a virtual training for learners themselves? Thank you very much, and that is the end of my presentation. At this point, I'd welcome anyone with a question, comment, suggestion, anything, or even your reflections. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mercy, for an amazing presentation and a lot of insights to unpack from your well-detailed experience from how. So you started with highlighting some of the challenges. Basically, like it felt like, oh, this was not going to end, because truly there are challenges, especially if we consider the rural context. But yeah, there's so much opportunities in spite of those challenges to still effectively support learners, especially those at those foundational years that are bedrock of basically forms the bedrock of all the learning that would happen in their adult life. So thank you. I'll come back to all of that. But we also promised to show the slide. So show the scene. So I have it open, or if you get to it, we can show it just after we take some questions. So please, if you have questions, this is the right time to just write in the question and answer feature or in the chat. We'll pick it up from there and then ask our speaker. Or if you'd like to speak directly, please just raise your virtual hand and I'll be happy to hand the mic over so that you can ask directly any questions you might have. While we are waiting for questions to come through, um, a lot of things to unpack, but the first thing that comes to mind, things around, of course, teachers resistant to change, often, which I believe comes from, I would say, there maybe digital literacy or low confidence around the use of technology. But we'll come back to that. But one of the things that stood out was the feedback you gave from one of the students that says, "Oh, less calculation and less paperwork, and we're learning so much already." And this brings to mind a conversation we had at a similar gathering as this, where someone did highlight the need to the need to start considering how students learn and teaching them that way, as against teaching them with well established or the way we believe they will learn. So designing for what works best for them. But how much of a change in terms of your experience or you were there with the students, how much of how much of motivation or engagement or that validation did such an experience bring to students, especially with that context, which I would expect many of them might be interacting, might be having that experience for the first time. How much of such a change or shift did that bring to the learners?
Thank you very much for that question. Um, the change was not small, it was a big change. In terms of learner experiences, there was that big change. In as much as they are trying to learn a particular concept, there's that joy in learning. There's that joy in learning. So there was that change. Yes.
Okay, great. I'll come back to the question around teachers. I see some questions are dropping in already, and we'll just jump right in, and I'll come back to a few more questions. Thank you for dropping your questions. I see Judith. Judith is asking, is this to be incorporated in the current learning curriculum, or is it independent? So this, what you designed, supporting teachers and learners, was this part of their standard classroom in school, or was it like an out of school extracurricular activity?
Okay, the current curriculum we are using in primary schools is the CBC, which is in full, it's known as the competency based curriculum. So, this competency based curriculum, most areas of the curriculum, you find that they prefer students to use technology to learn. So, in this context, in the rural context, you find that yes, in as much as they have technology provided by the government, and the incapacitation of teachers on using it, right? They are not using it, but it's something that is in the curriculum. So we come in to support that gap and to fill that gap. Yeah, so it's something in the curriculum.
Okay, great. Thank you. Maxwell is also asking, you mentioned an interesting aspect of peer learning by teachers. Is a community of practice or learning something you are considering to ensure teachers keep learning even after you are unable to support them directly anymore?
Well, I would say peer support of teachers starts with the school itself, the staff room itself, where you have teachers, like either one or two, and it spreads outwards, right? You may not build a community of practice outward there, but you start with you start in your own in your own staff room, where you have two or three teachers and having classes to teach. So they come together and do that. So these particular teachers are the one again who are going to build communities of practice, considering the experience they have been having and their continuous learning, and also ways of making others to come and learn with them and improve their teaching practice. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. I hope that answers your question, Maxwell. Tabot is also asking, Mateliso is saying, wonderful presentation, lots of feedback. Nyasa, it says, thank you. Okay, Tabot is saying, considering the ages of the learners, what ideas or suggestions do you put forth to make sure that even at home, these learners could actively explore the themes?
Okay, so considering the age, so you find that um, between 9 and 12 years, children are learning fractions using technology for the first time. Probably when they were in lower grades, they were not even understanding the concepts. They were just grasping, like they were memorizing, but they're not really understanding. So in their homes, you find that even their parents may not even have smartphones to access the PhET simulations. So they have to be in school to learn this because of the government provided tablets. So it's the teacher's duty to ensure that these learners are grasping more. They may not achieve much while at home. Remember, I talked about their parents having limited education. So they may not achieve more at home. They may achieve more in school uh, with the help of the teachers to give them assignments or even like engaging them during free hours to do some of these simulations. But at home, I may not promise, or it's not promisable. Very, very few parents have smartphones. And even if they have smartphones, they may not even afford the internet itself. So much change can only be seen in the school setup.
Okay, great. A few more questions. I see you might have answered Adijat's question. Can one explore the use of simulations in rural school where there is no electricity?
Okay, electricity, lack of electricity is a major challenge because these tablets that have been provided by the government are supposed to be charged. Okay, they're just charged by like you the way you charge your phone. So where there is no electricity, we may come in handy with the tablets from the office and show them. Okay, or even teachers themselves may use what they have, like smartphones, which is also not very easy. So we were lucky. Nowadays we have areas with the electricity. In as much as we have there is electricity, but it's limited. There are some classrooms which have electricity, some don't have electricity. Okay, and some teachers, you find that they volunteer even to charge the tablets and come with them to school for learners to use. So teachers will go out of their way, the school administration will go out of their way to ensure that learners get the most out of those tablets, okay, out of the contents in the tablets. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, tablets are amazing opportunities. They are safe and secure. So they're as much as moving them around poses its risk. It means they can also be moved across classes because not all school, not apart from internet, not all schools can afford to have computers in individual schools. So you can also schedule and then use across different classrooms to support different learners with the same device. So tablets is something I would say like we definitely consider, and the SIMs are available. I want to unpack what you said about local languages. I'm just curious to know. You're aware the SIMs are available and are accessible in Swahili. Did the learners learn in? Did you switch or teach in Swahili as in, or did you code switch? Did you teach in English and you explained in Swahili? Just can you shed some light into that?
Okay, what I meant about home language is Swahili, and the Swahili is not the very fluent Swahili. It's a mix of little English and a lot of Swahili that is very basic. And so we didn't use the simulations which have been translated to Swahili because what the teachers felt is that learners are more visual. They're more visual. And so if they see what is happening in the simulation, the teacher explains that in more Swahili with and very little English. Okay, so the visual fact of the simulations and the aspect of it being playful uh, didn't really necessitate the fact that we would use the Swahili simulation. The English was just fine, but learners were also not reading. You see, like the screen doesn't have um, any language in it. When you expose the student to the simulation itself, there's no wording in the simulation, then it was not necessary to use the Swahili simulations because it's something that they do and they just see the numbers like that.
Okay, great. Let's see. There's still some questions coming through. I see Martin is asking, will Martin, yes, the recording will be available. Please, there's a recording already in the group. If you're part of the community on Facebook, you can catch up there, or just go to YouTube and you find the playlist of this recording as well as past editions of the webinar. Welcome, Sam. Please, you can catch up as well with the recording. I'll just go through quickly. I know we have about 10 minutes from the end, as always, like I said. It's almost never enough time. So I invite you to join the community on Facebook if you're not part of it yet, so that we can continue this conversation. I'll just take a moment to look through if I missed any question. If you still have questions, please feel free to write. We'll get to that, but I think we've covered the questions in the chat. In the presentation, just echoing some of the things you said. Bon Chance is saying, in this presentation, some challenges related to PhET seems rooted from financial barrier and lack of awareness. How Africa overcome, how can Africa overcome this challenge? So my understanding is, and if I'm wrong, please feel free to correct, is there were challenges, but the SIMs offered opportunities to overcome them. But the challenges, the root cause of the challenge were not the same, but they were more financial limitations, just like you said, as well as lack of awareness. Um, how do you think more teachers or more schools or more communities, especially in the rural context, can become aware of your method and your experience, and then of course gather the will and the confidence to even give it a shot, and then adopt and use in their classroom?
Okay, just to give uh, just to give him the context is that we highlighted challenges the teachers would face if they were not using PhET simulations. Okay, and so considering that, he's asking whether in rural setting how this awareness can be increased. First of all, this information, we have teachers who took this very positively and they are doing amazing things out there. They're actually sharing this information with other teachers out there. We also have these teacher groups that unite every teacher And if not every teacher, it unites the head teachers of those primary schools. So you find that they share widely about what is happening in their schools, and even some they request us to come to their particular schools and show them this particular um, a great resource known as PhET simulations. So it's a matter of communication. Communication is always there among teachers. It can never miss. We also get a lot of communications. People communicate, even learners communicate with other learners out there who communicate with other teachers out there. And so therefore, this is information that is actually spreading, okay? Considering the teacher groups that are there, organizations that work with other teachers. We also share a lot, and therefore, this is news that spreads out very widely.
Awesome. Thank you. I see. So my colleague Zach just dropped the link to the community on Facebook in the chat. Please feel free to join if you're active and you'd want to continue the conversation there. As we begin to wrap up, again, we okay, before I get to wind down, you also made a very important point, and I'm going to tie two of the points you made together. You said you spoke about resistance to change from teachers, and this is like a difficult problem because it's the roots are multifaceted. Like it could be confidence, it could be the will to actually do the extra work, check the devices, navigate those constraints in terms of even rescheduling established time slots to get the best value to teachers. In ensuring teachers um, get trained or confident, and I'm referring to continuous training beyond the very well proven route of peer support and community of practices. How can more teachers basically get equipped basically to embrace technology or use PhET in their classroom?
Um, it starts with the root cause of using less technology in teaching. Remember, I mentioned they are used to their mobile phones as the only technology they use. But now I'm letting them now to use that particular technology in their teaching requires them to learn more. So there are this the discomfort in that you are required to change, and the process is a bit like overwhelming for them, because even as we were doing the training, the steps for us, the steps that we went through to get to the simulations, some could find it overwhelming because you had to open the tablets. You had to, like, maneuver around the tablets, which is something they're not used to. You have to see how the simulations are downloaded, which files are downloadable, um, the technical glitches. That is something they're afraid of, because they assume that, this thing is going to give me problems. So they're afraid of such technical glitches. There's this aspect of logging in so that you can access the offline app. So that particular process, they might find it very, very tedious when they compare it to their normal teaching methods, which they are very comfortable to use. So that is the kind of difficulty they have. It's really difficult for them to change at once. But once we show them the importance of using these simulations by implementing it in classrooms and using those particular lessons they have, and use the first simulations to demonstrate, then they're going to see the importance and use first simulations more, in as much as it might be overwhelming to get to that point. Okay, so they will appreciate it more if they use it more in classrooms. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So there's a need to continuously provide support and then ensure teachers are continuously trained. It's not a bang in the pan where you just do it once and you expect that they're good to go. Continuous support and training of teachers is necessary to ensure that there's sustainable, lasting, and then of course awesome change in the effective teaching of math and science across all schools, both rural and urban, on the continent. On this note, would like to appreciate our speaker, Mercy, and of course, thank you for sharing your amazing experience and all the work. I know supporting teachers in that context is a whole lot of work, or even going to teach in that context can be difficult. But thank you for sharing. There was a whole lot to learn from that, and it was a good way to also get the conversation started for the year. And yeah, thank you again for sharing, and we wish you well. Thank you everyone for joining the very first edition of the Africa Share and Discuss webinar. It was exciting to have you join us today. We promise to continue to bring you amazing conversations as the year winds or as we go along in the year. If there is any conversation that you would like to hear, or anything in particular you would want us to focus on that we've not found a speaker to address, please feel free to write to us at fetglobal@colorado.edu, or just connect with any member of the team on Facebook, and we'll be happy to consider that topic or just find a speaker to address so that we can continue to support the effective teaching and learning of math and science across our schools on the continent. Thank you once again for joining us. We look forward to having you again next month. Bye for now.
Bye.